Hi guys, welcome to another Lockdown Live. We are on day, what's it now? Monday, we're on day 11 of being locked up and locked down by the government. I think it's from here on forward, it's going to be a lot more, it's going to get interesting for the people at home. Right, today I'm going to chat to a guy that I've met via Instagram, Jay Caboz, as he said to me in his voice note. I was not sure how to pronounce his surname. Anyway, Jay is a journalist and a photographer. Very nice guy, does some really cool stuff. He's been featured quite a bit with his drone photos that he does of the tidal pools in Cape Town. And I know that he's doing a bit of coverage on the current COVID-19 situation in Cape Town. So I think we can chat a little bit about that. I don't want to have too many negative things going on in this little show. But yeah, so right now we're just gonna see if Jay can join. So what have you guys been up to? Please leave a comment and listen. If you guys got any questions, please type them out in the question field. We will answer them. I am looking at both my screens, so I can see when you guys comment on something, and then we can chat about that. You know, this little journey that I've undertaken with doing one of these each day during lockdown has been quite interesting. Got some really cool people coming up in the next week, and I'll share some more later tomorrow. It's going to be quite an interesting one, I think. And yeah, if my plan is for this, as soon as the lockdown finished and we don't have to be stuck at home, I would still like to do one of these every week and convert it to a podcast, not necessarily just via the internet, but definitely in person as well. And I'm going to see if I can set up a little something here. This is my dining room / live studio at the moment. And I've got beautiful light here, so that is kind of what I'm figuring in, or what my plan is. So we'll see how that pans out. Right, now we just need to get Jay to come on here. It's the wonderful thing about technology in 2020. Everything else is seeming to fall apart, yet this is still, thank goodness, still working. Hey,
how's it going?
All right, and you, man?
Good.
Good. You look all dressed up and nowhere to go.
Well, you know, it's any excuse to get dressed and ready. You know, these days you got to like pounce on it. So.
Louise, who does quite a bit of work with me, her kids gave them a formal invitation on Sunday morning saying that they should be dressed and ready for a fancy dress party, and they all got dressed in suit and tie and the whole bang shoot for a dinner that the kids prepared for them yesterday.
Oh, that's cute.
You need to keep yourself entertained somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I suppose like as we're getting further along, it's a little bit more, it's not as new as it was. So now you kind of starting getting to that phase where everything just starts getting boring and you don't really know what's going on yet. and you're hoping that it will end after 21 days, but you're not sure. But yeah, interesting times, eh?
If it ends after the 21 days, I think we're going to be very lucky. I think if they lift the lockdown, we will still be very, very restricted in what we get to do after this. So I still think I had a chat to my neighbor who's got a coffee shop in town, and he's really feeling the pain of this lockdown, because he says he's got 11 staff he needs to pay. He must still pay his rent, electricity. He can't buy coffee beans from his supplier, the whole bang shoot. He says it's a nightmare. And I said to him, well, the way I'm seeing this, I don't think any of the restaurants will open once the lockdown is finished.
Well, you'd hope they'd be able to open, but getting stock is going to be a different matter altogether. Yeah, I suppose it's an interesting point to raise. Because, obviously a lot of businesses are affected by this. It's not just, and it's a lot of the, it's not just essential services that are still running. There's potential for lots of companies to go under that you wouldn't even expect, even the ones that are essential services, because they're having to shift and adapt. But yeah, I don't know about food supply. I haven't thought about it.
Say again, sorry, about the fruit supplies?
No, I was just thinking, yeah, it probably would affect them, but the farmers, if it's local produce, it's probably they'd be able to source it pretty quickly,
Yeah.
It's the guys who are importing that it affects the most, because obviously the imports is still locked down, so they won't be able to get their hands on that very quickly.
And also with a lot of the farmers on that subject is I work a lot with farmers that's in the export market with regards to fruit and everything, and with them at the moment they are doing very well because there's a high demand in fresh fruit overseas. So it's not like they're sending containers full of fruit overseas and it doesn't get sold and they're not making any money. It does get sold. Doesn't matter what the quality could even be slightly down. There's still a market for it. And the rand dollar exchange is that even if they were selling less, they were still making the same amount of money they would have made in a good season. So I think on the farming front is that the guys in the growing fruit for export market, they are in a very good position at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're probably one of the few ones. Yeah. Oh, I'd agree with that. I mean, like, if you think about it, I don't know, restaurants, well, if they could survive the 21 days without bringing in any capital, because it's obviously they run very short margins on their businesses. So usually they typically will have, it's a month or two's worth of cash, so, for a rainy day. But, it's once you get past that 21 days, then it's, then it really is emergency status. And, that's where it's critical, which is why the 21 days, I think,
I said to my neighbor as well, he buys his stuff like his bacon, eggs, and those kind of things. He buys from local guys as much as he can. But now you've got a guy supplying free range eggs that can supply the restaurants and maybe like little cafes and stuff. But he hasn't got an account with like a Checkers or Pick n Pay or ShopRite. So and if it did, they would only pay him 120 days. So he would still be out of pocket. Yet he is an essential service, but he can't supply at the moment because he hasn't got anybody to supply to. And to get all those is going to be a nightmare to do right now.
Oh, well, we'll have to wait and see. I suppose it's the next wave of impact that we'll be feeling after lockdown, post-lockdown, when it happens. But the nice thing is, though, we are kind of in a unique position in that when we started lockdown, we were a couple of weeks behind other countries. So we can kind of gauge what other countries are doing, and then we can adapt according to how that behavior affected their economies. So we can look at other countries and then kind of adapt that model or change the model, because we'll know what does or doesn't work. So we are in a fortunate position in that regard. So hopefully we'll be able to learn our lessons from that. But yeah, still very much I think everyone's very hesitant and very unsure about what the next year is going to bring for all of us.
Yeah. All right, let's step back a little bit. I think I quickly mentioned in a little intro that you're a journalist by trade, and photography is a big passion of yours as well. So I think let's just, for the people that don't know you, just give a quick rundown of what you do and all those kind of things.
Cool. Okay. Hey guys, I'm Jay Caboz. I'm a journalist at Business Insider South Africa. I do a lot of multimedia based work, so that's photography, video, as well as written articles. We at Business Insider, well, as a journalist, I do a lot of feature based articles, so that's looking for quirky, weird sorts of stories. So I'm not really typically on hard news beats. So it's more about creating stories around people or businesses in particular. So some good examples would be, try to engage a lot with drone communities and people coming up with very interesting ways and innovative ways of using drones in agriculture spaces, in photography spaces, or whatever it is. Another example is tech, a lot of app developments, talking about innovation, how it can transform South Africa. So I usually work along those sorts of lines, producing that sort of content. I usually like to think of the stuff that I do. I get very excited when I can bring a story that no one's really heard of before to the foreground, or our audience. And because the Business Insider is part of the Media 24 branch of news publications, we've got a very large user base. And I believe with all the recent lockdown content, we were like some of the top most read websites, online website publications in the country, actually. Yeah, it was quite crazy, business publications skyrocketing through. So yeah, very much so. So I do also anything from satellite images. I love flying my drone. And then I'm also running around with a Sony A7 III, taking landscape photos in my spare time. And then if I can get out the office, it's going out shooting protests, engaging with entrepreneurs, producing picture stories around that.
Now, who's some of the most interesting people that you've had interviews with?
Sure. That's hard, because there's so many. Let's think. We've had I think some of the best, most interesting stories I've had done has got to be, it was quite a while ago, but it still stays true with me or sticks with me, is there's a company called the Popo, which is trains rats to sniff out landmines or sniff out the TNT in landmines. And it was all based by the whole premise of the story was based on a Belgian Buddhist monk who thought he could train them in Mozambique to sniff out these landmines. And then I went with this company to Angola, where they were initiating the project first off. And it was an incredible story about how we went into like an actual minefield where we could see I saw the rats in action as they're condition trained to sniff. When they sniff correctly the TNT, they're rewarded with a banana. So when they go out into the field, they associate that this will work, and then they'll go and sniff in the land, and then they scratch at the spot, and then the deminers can identify those spots. And the whole premise is that it's based on making it more efficient than sniffer dogs, because you can pack 12 rats into a bucky in the middle of nowhere, and they can do so much more surface area than, say, for instance, a dog. Or and another benefit would be that these rats can also they won't give you false positives by hitting, like a mine detector would pick up pieces of metal as well. So it could pick up a bullet, but it could also pick up a tin can lid, and you wouldn't know the difference. So you'd spend a lot of time, trying to see if this was a landmine when in actual fact it wasn't. So, people using animals can do incredible things like that. So very crazy story.
I can also imagine that the rat is light enough not to set off the landmine, whereas a dog I could step on it potentially and set it off. If I'm just thinking of an Alsatian, or they should be able to do that.
Yes, exactly that. So that's also the one benefit of them. And obviously they, they don't really require much in the way of food or specialized food. They just need a couple of a couple of pieces of fruit and, a little bit of love and care. And then they're quite happy to, work, and they're very cute, actually. They're great names. They give them good names like Lionel Messi. And, so it's like there's a real bond between the owner or the deminer and his rats. Like they've got a good bond, and they will all have their own little characteristics. So it's very cute. Yeah.
And on that, is it quite an expensive exercise to get these rats to be trained up to do this? And why I'm asking is I met a gentleman last year who's from the States, and they have got a company where they build specialized equipment for testing in labs. So for instance, they would build a machine so that, in this case, it's mice, that mice will always try to be where it's dark. So it's a machine where they test to see how long a mouse will last before it goes insane or it kills itself or it dies if it can't go into the dark. Or what happens if so basically what will happen is there will be a dark place and there's a shock pad underneath. So as soon as the mouse goes in there, he gets shocked and he runs out again. So they do all these kind of lab tests. And he said to me that those mice, and often when they do when they do testing with different kind of medicines and stuff, all the mice in the test facility needs to be 100% clones. So there's no variance from mouse A to mouse B. And he said those mice range in any excess of $6,000 and up per mouse.
Oh, well, I think in that situation it would be more lab based. So obviously it's the context is the lab testing itself. Whereas these rats you can think of more as working animals. So I think they were slightly cheaper than they were a lot cheaper than raising a dog to do the same job.
Okay.
This area. So they weren't. If I can recall that, I can't remember exactly how much they were, but like the actual raising cost, but it wasn't something astronomically expensive,
because they grow feeding, they breed.
Yeah, and they were also African African rats, so they quite large rats, so they live a lot longer than normal rats would, and they're more. The theory was that they're a little bit more intelligent.
I would presume that they can't really use any invasive kind of species. So if the thing does get out and get lost in the veld, it won't cause damage. Like if you would have a non-native animal get loose.
Well, yeah, they're carefully managed. They are they are living in cages. So you would hope that they wouldn't escape. But yes, yeah, some of them are local, but they have been using the cane rats in other countries as well. So it's not just in Africa. I think they were using them in Laos and Cambodia, or training them. They're specifically bred in a location. So they, like each has got its isolated not factory, but each has got its own managerial site where they operate from and where they care after the rats. So it's like a pretty well looked after facility, Yeah, interesting. There was talk that they were going to develop that project a bit further, and they're going to train the rats to sniff out TB, tuberculosis, in sputums, which was like the next stage of what they were doing, because obviously TB is a very big problem in South Africa and in the rest of Africa as well. So yeah, that's like where they're playing around now at the moment, is trying to convince people that the rats are pretty, that they produce pretty good results in terms of like consistency of smelling, like as an early detection system, which is quite interesting.
Oh, awesome. I've had a gentleman, Rob Wright, ask me, Minister of Health, with a question mark. So I presume, Rob, you want to know if Jay has interviewed him.
Yes, I have interviewed Aaron Motsoaledi back in the day when he was still health minister. I haven't interviewed Zweli Mkhize, but Yes, Aaron was actually, he formed a very big part of, I did like a very big project on TB research in South Africa. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. This was when major drugs were being tested in South Africa by the likes of bedaquiline and new drugs that were coming onto the market, which had been clinically trialed in South Africa and the rest of the world, and had helped to reduce the regime of TB treatments. So if you can remember, if you ever had TB before, like in the 2000s, you used to have to take like hundreds of pills and be on TB drugs for like years before you were cured. So they helped to reduce that regimen down to like 6 months and like take down the number of pills down to, I think it was like 20 or something. Very interesting sort of work Mr. Mozzolelli did. He was also very numbers straight kind of guy. You know, when before the interview, he wanted to know what we specifically wanted to talk about. So he wanted to have his numbers prepped beforehand. And yeah, actually very, very passionate about health. And especially TB, very, very, very interested in it. And as you know, as William Kizi as well as Aaron Mozzolelli are doctors. So they have worked through the system, they have had the experience on the ground, and they're very much aware of the current condition, you know, the current crisis with coronavirus, which is why I think, at least with William Kizi, is very level-headed about the decisions, and he has been turning to a lot of science, you know, to make basis his decisions for the lockdown.
Okay, so what kind of stuff have you done? I know that you said to me before that you are going to be working, covering some of the COVID stories. So what have you done in this since this thing has hit South Africa?
Yeah, so it's been quite hectic for us as journalists working. We're producing all sorts of content. Business Insider, we like to give everything a bit of a consumer spin to it. So it means a lot of looking into what sort of stock is being selling in stores. What are the rules and regulations about what you are supposed to, you know, trying to figure out where we can answer the many questions that the average consumer is asking on the ground for, you know, for our readers. So we're looking at answering, you know, like at the beginning when lockdown hits, did you need to drive around with a permit or not? So a lot of those, and on, you know, those very much uncertain questions that a lot of people are looking to find answers for, as well as looking at toilet paper selling for some reason because of people, you know, stockpiling, covering that sort of, you know, I don't want to say carnage, but that panic obviously influenced a lot of people to go out and try stock up. Meanwhile, the grocery chains or the retail chains were saying, listen, guys, we've got so much stock that we've been preparing for this for months and we're not going to run out of anything. You don't need to panic buy. So it's just that contrast, you know, between what's the reality, what's happening on the ground versus what's happening in the businesses. So covering a lot of those stories, as well as I have been out on the streets myself for a couple of days. I went out on lockdown day 1 and it was eerily quiet. You know, there was a lot of, like, even myself, I was driving around quite nervously because there was quite a few blockades. And so long as you had as a journalist, you travel around with a permit and then your ID and then your press card. And so long as you've got that with you, you were fine with going through roadblocks or, you know, being inspected by police. They, you know, generally are pretty comfortable with how you are, you know, you're there as an essential service person. There wasn't that much uncertainty. And I think just on the ground experience wise, very much seeing these empty streets and the contrast also with there is still quite a lot of homeless people out in the streets, especially around CBD area. Like those are generally the people that are walking around. So our Media 24 buildings are based right in the Cape Town city of Cape Town foreshore. And just walking around those areas is very different. You can realize how like empty the streets can be. It's like quite weird because you can actually hear the echoes of the seagulls, you know, the wind whistling through, and, you know, usually like just
I
trucks
imagine.
And yeah, so there is a lot of that on the ground. And then also just recently I was out on Thursday. I visited some of the taxi ranks, which is very interesting as well, because, you know, those are still, even though they're not as busy as they were or have been, they're still like there's very much, that's where a lot of people are congregating, because, you know, that's an essential service. It's for transport. It's to help people get from A to B. And those are like the services that are needed to operate. And you can still see that there's very much, there are people around there. Sometimes it's a bit of a jarring sort of experiencing all people walking around with face masks, especially I would say that a lot of the older elderly are wearing the masks and following the directions and regulations from as recommended by the government. So, but like you can still see in certain instances, there's a lot of people can't, South Africans are struggling to understand what social distancing is. So you'll see there will be a lot of queues for buses and people are standing right on top of each other, which it can be a bit worrying. At the same time, it is an open air sort of facility, but then you'll have still someone who's wearing a mask. So, you know, like it's, you know, that everyday life habit that you've got to try break, which has been the interesting thing to witness, is us trying to change our habits that we built over years and years and years of living in, you know, like this is how things are done. You know, it was very interesting watching people getting onto Golden Arrow buses, because obviously before this, that you just kind of piled in, you know, one person goes into the bus, you pay for your tickets and then you go off, you know, like you go sit down. Whereas now they had to count the number of people going in. So the time that it actually takes to get into a taxi or get into a mode of transport is that much longer, because everyone's having to double check that you are following the regulations of what government was saying, which is now the 70% inside a vehicle, as opposed to 50% that was at the beginning. And then for about 10 minutes, the 100%, so long as you all wore PP3 masks, so, you know, or N94 masks. So, you know, it's very interesting to see how that information kind of like sifts through the whole, you know, cascades down to the average consumer and the worker.
Tell me quickly, on the topic of the permits and the taxi ranks, how has the police in general been, where you got into contact with them? Because I know that the DA has set up WhatsApp lines about police brutality and all sorts of stuff. And I say, well, it's the first time in the history of the new South Africa that the police has actually had a little bit of power to enforce the law. How has they been when you've got in contact with them?
My personal experience, they've been very professional. They've seemed to know exactly what's on the ground, going on the ground. One of the policemen even told me my license just had expired, but he was going to let me off for the 21 days.
Not like in the queue.
I mean, yeah, okay. So jokes aside, no, I think they've dealt with it very well. I haven't been involved with a lot of the raids that have been going on in the townships, where I think it's a little bit more difficult to police, it was always going to be more difficult to police as compared to, you know, a Sea Point where I live, where everyone pretty much can follow the rules. We've all got a pretty decently large, you know, by comparison, you know, we've got fairly decent accommodation and we're not living inside a matchbox with 4 people. So, you know, like I really feel for the people on the ground as well as the police having to try and manage this. It's it's a very different situation from the city urban sort of lifestyle versus the rural or the township lifestyle. And, you know, we have to be aware that, you know, even if it feels like it's an inconvenience for you, the results are not, it's the main reason for these regulations and for them trying to enforce it so strictly is for people who live in the townships, who live in the rural areas where this virus, if it does start spreading, can be potentially very, very dangerous for them.
Yeah, to be honest, since we went into lockdown, I've been to the shops, I think 4 times. That we literally had to go buy medicines for the new baby, and I had to take Karen to the nursing sister and all sorts of stuff. And I haven't seen one single cop car on the road, but I know that Worcester in its own has got, there's 3 major, like if you want to call it rural, informal types of, with black people and colored people. And not necessarily the township, the black township area. That's generally on a normal basis pretty quiet, but the colored areas has got lots of gang violence, and I think it could even rival like the Cape Flats type of gang violence. Is that I think it was on Thursday, last week Thursday, they locked up 60 people in the one place that they just picked up from the roads, and these are gangsters and drug dealers. And yes, the sale of alcohol and cigarettes has been reduced, but the drugs are still very prevalent in these things.
Yeah, that is obviously a key concern. But I think with the stopping of alcohol, it has made a significant impact on day-to-day life. It has kind of encouraged people to stay at home a lot more. But it's also, I think, encouraged people to just stop drinking and driving, where a lot of incidents happen. But yeah, in terms of actual presence, coming into the city and going out, there's quite a few roadblocks. So those are your main funnel areas. So underneath the M1, in Woodstock, on the highway itself, along those routes, they're very well, that's kind of where the most of the flow of traffic is going through. Yeah, I think the point is that, let's be honest, like 90% of South Africans are taking this seriously, and then there will be, the odd percent of people who are taking advantage of it. And kind of what we have to deal with,
My wife needs to be at Christian Barner tomorrow morning for a checkup with a gynae. So we're busy getting all the forms and everything ready. She's going to drive by herself. So as long as she's got all the paperwork and stuff in the car, then it should be fine, because I need to stay home and look after the other two kids and all those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as you got the paperwork, obviously you're going to feel a bit nervous and anxious about it because you're unfamiliar with how the system is. But generally, the police aren't there to go after people who are following the law. They're after people who are not supposed to be there. That's the people who are faking being non-essential workers. Those are the, like those people who are trying to take a chance when you shouldn't take a chance, because it's not really to protect the government, it's to protect us, the people, South Africans. We need to look after all of us as a nation. And that's I think the point.
Okay.
And
I think, yeah, you want to say?
No, I was going to say that what I would say to people with regards to a lot of these violence stories is we as in the collective we of media is seeing a lot of fake news going out. We try identify it as much as we can, but please, you got to also just be aware some footage that you might see that might appear shocking might not even be taken from within this time period. And it's come across quite a lot, actually. Recently, we've noticed lots of posts and also a lot of people fabricating, the watermarks of your websites to make their false claims and incite panic that much more, like authentic. So you could just have to be very careful what you take what you see over social media with a very large pinch of salt. And
company 24 and you guys doing to make yourself authentic, so that people know that this is real, that what these guys are sharing? Is there anything that you guys can you do anything to prove that to people?
So obviously journalists all are quite overworked, but for me, before I post any pictures or any or repost any sort of information, I'm double checking it with the actual company that's posting that, as well as to see if there is publication or there's information about it that's been written before from authentic sites that's following, whether it's a government protocol or whether it's, a journal article that's been published in a respectable publication, so you're looking for that information. There's a lot of that background work that's going on in between it. If I come across an image, I will also reverse image search it to see if it does originate from the time it came, it originated from, as well as also I do sometimes, if the photo looks a little bit photoshopped, I will use Photoshop checking apps or websites, so you can check to see if it's been edited or not. And I'm also looking at a lot of the metadata inside the images themselves, because sometimes the person who's actually faking the image isn't an expert in Photoshop and doesn't know how to wipe the metadata. And often you'll be able to trace them right back to the source very easily. And, like if the more you do it, the easier it is to actually spot like when something is a little bit dodgy. But always take, even if I get press releases coming in now, I always take it with a pinch of salt to say, okay, is this legit? Is it for real? We are doing, cross-checking and back checking just to make sure, especially when it comes to information about SARS and, COVID-19.
I think it's just a horrible cycle, and most people will not go into the effort to go look for metadata, and it's pretty easy to find it if you just scratch around on images. It's just too easy for them to click that little share button on Facebook, and it drives me insane. There's people that's on my Facebook, and I'm pretty sure on yours as well. If you go into their timeline, there's like at 16:51 they shared this, at 16:52 they shared that, 16:52 the next one. It is literally all they do the whole day long.
I've even caught my family out a couple of times. There was that picture floating around of all those military vehicles that were down a road, and it turned out like it was from like a military parade in Swane, like at the beginning of the year, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, the military's out to get us! Look at this, they're in full force." Anyway, needless to say, they felt, I think, quite shamed, and then apparently the message went back along the chain to shout at everyone who'd posted the photo. So there was a lot of shaming back there.
Forward this to 10 of your friends, or God will hit you with a lightning beam as where you stand. People don't think, they just click hit share or copy and paste and off they go. But yeah, anyway, right, let's change the subject a little bit to something more positive. What's going on with photography lately?
Photography. Yeah, no, it's been quite an interesting journey. Obviously with lockdown, I'm photographing a lot of images of the streets themselves, a lot of isolation images, but I'm shifting that towards, so that's like the photojournalism side of me, taking photographs of inside stores, empty shelves, people working, that sort of thing. But yeah, no, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a big passionate photographer, and in my spare time, I will do a lot of landscape photography. So I've been using this lockdown time quite well, using it to edit my backlog of hundreds of shoots, like we all do have. But yeah, I'm I very much love being out in the outdoors. When we moved to Cape Town in 2016, we fell in love with landscape and nature-based work. I've always been a big fan of being in the outdoors. So if I can, I'll always I'll try to get out for a sunset, even if it's not looking the greatest, or even if you don't think it's going to be a banger. But, that's part of the joy. And, I'm quite fortunate that I can live in Sea Point, so I'm very close to the ocean. So, or Lion's Head if I need to be. Although I'm quite tired of hiking up Lion's Head, I must admit.
Yeah, I wonder what the general Instagram public in Cape Town is doing with their spare time now that they can't be on Lion's Head anymore.
They're all making streaming videos. Yeah, it's amazing how you can actually, when you've got all this free time to actually like edit stuff, because I think a lot of people don't realize is that being a photographer means you're waking up before sunrise, you're going out, you're getting, because that's when the light's the best, whether you're photographing people or if you're photographing you know, sunrises or sunsets or whatever it is, you know, like the best light is morning and evening. So you want to be out there at those times, which obviously often means that you have weird sleeping patterns and you sometimes take naps during the day. But, you know, that's when you know, like you're really chasing something and you know that you want to produce good content, you know, especially if you're shooting natural light.
Yeah. Well, there's shots that I've waited 4 years to get the shot that I wanted, and then I've never seen conditions like that again to go and recreate something similar or whatever. The conditions has just never been the same again, or better than what you saw at that particular time.
Yeah, it happens. It's been happening a lot lately. We had a real banger of a sunset just before lockdown, actually. I got a really nice photo of at Sunset Beach in Milnerton there. Very, very nice. You know, it's popping and, you know, get some nice reflection off the water with Table Mountain in the background. If you guys know the location, it's absolutely beautiful. And then I think the last one we had was, remember, there was a couple of weeks ago, there was that quite a large, well, a thunderstorm that rolled through, and we managed to get out as well. Just by chance, we were about to leave and we're like, no, this, you know, this is going to fizzle out. It was like 9 o'clock. We were tired. The wind was pumping like you cannot believe. And we were with a couple of mates of mine, Carl and Alex as well. And we were just looking and waiting and thinking, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And then we saw that one strike, you know, and then you see it over Lion's Head popping, and then you like grab your gear and you're in shorts because it's summer and the wind is howling and it's like sandpaper rubbing off your hairs on your legs because you're standing there trying to get the shot in the middle of the night. You know, that's the kind of stuff I live for, you know.
But I've been fortunate enough. It's 8 years ago, 2012. Hogart Milan phoned me the afternoon. He says, listen, there's thunderstorms building out Worcester. He could see it from Stellenbosch. He said, am I keen to go? I said, well, does a lion eat meat? So he came me up. We chased down the one storm. We got some epic shots. And then the next afternoon, we went again. And I went back once in 2015 where I got some nice shots, but I've never had the opportunity again to go and shoot the same conditions. And also, it's not that the conditions hasn't been there. It's been there, but now it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You see, right, listen, this is going to go down because that's when the thunderstorms start picking up. And then I've sent you messages to find someone to go with you.
Yeah.
It's all fine to go alone, but it's nicer to have somebody that you can stand around and chat with while you're experiencing this.
Yeah, that's half the journey, isn't it? You know, like it's sharing that moment with someone, you know. One great thing is that social media does allow you to share those moments with people using your feeds and your stories, which is why I like social media. But, you know, nothing beats being able to share that moment with someone who's equally passionate about something that you want to do. And yes, I will go with you for a shoot one day. But that was when the lockdown was starting or something. There was like some crazy thing. I finished work at like 6 o'clock or 7 at night. Yeah. But yeah.
The time we left it, he picked me up at like 4 and we were out there in a crew. I think it was by 5:30-ish, because it's just over an hour's drive to that particular spot. And he only dropped me at just after 11 that evening, and he still went back to Stellenbosch. Yeah. And next did it again. And the other thing, there's no cell phone reception on those roads going out that way. So if you do get in a ship, you burst a tire or something happens, you are completely alone. If you've got somebody with you and something does go wrong, at least you've got somebody that can go and look for help or whatever the story is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's always safe, you know, safety in numbers. I mean, even with us, we're quite fortunate. We've got a little photographic group. You know, there's a couple of guys who live in Cape Town. We go out together on missions every now and again, you know, whether it's especially with the early morning stuff. So we can get up there at 3 a.m. or meet at a spot at 2 a.m. So you can do your 3-hour hike to get up to a location so that you like, you know, at least you're safe together in that number. And I mean, you know, like there are some pretty dodgy areas that we like, you just gotta be safe about it. I mean, I'm also walking around with some mace, spray mace. I don't know if it will ever be helpful, but you know, at least it gives you a little bit of sense of security. But yeah, most of the time, I think I'm not missioning by myself completely. I've done a couple of solo missions, but I like to do it with people.
Have you had any problems on Table Mountain with people who came to bother you?
What, the Sandbox guys?
Apart from them, but from
no, for me, a couple of run-ins with some Berkies, but we could see them quite a far distance away, and we saw them heading towards us, so we just packed up our gear and left. There've been one or two incidents where I think maybe we might have been a bit scared. So we did it was a sunset mission that turned into a Star Trail mission up on top of Lion's Head. And on the way back, must have been very late, must have been 11 or 12. We were coming back down the trail. We were like freaking out. We switched off all our torches and we tried to be as quiet as we could whilst we were walking down the trail, you know, getting to that meeting spot. And then we went off trail because we heard like voices down below, and you know, whether it's a person just in a car you know, like chilling out, listening to music, or you don't really want to take that chance. So you use one of the other routes around. But I mean, that does happen, but it's, you know, like I'm pretty sure that 90% of the time nothing would happen to you, but you know, you really want to take that risk. And you've all got to be, you know, you've got to just be a bit sensible about it. I think I've had more of a worry like when I fly my drone, like in areas, you know, like along the beachfront, because you know, there's a lot of traffic going through, where some of the mountain routes are a little bit, I wouldn't take my drone with it because there's a sandbox area, so you wouldn't be flying your drone in a sandbox. So like if you're on the beachfront, sometimes there's, you know, like you do get a couple of people that look, you know, I like to think that there's like a sense, you can sense that someone's, you know, looking at you in the wrong way. And
especially
you know,
people just walk over when you take a drone out.
Yeah, all the time, man. And you're like, no, you have to stand back or else I can't lift the thing, you know.
Shoot cityscapes from the uncompleted bridge in town. From Sea Point side.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, what about it?
So we went on there one evening to go shoot because I wanted to get like light stuff with the F&B building and everything, because it's a and you've probably been there before. You've got the section that goes out, and then you've got the other road next to it. But there's like 1.5 meters, 2 meters gap between the two. And we saw there was bergies on the other side, on the other bridge. We saw them when we went in, because that was before they put that fence up. You could still drive in a little bit. So we walked in, and we looked at the setup. It was myself and another guy and another girl. This is a good couple of years ago. I think it was back in 2015. Anyway, so we started setting up, and next one I just hear footsteps. So I look around, and about 150 meters away from me, one of these bergies was walking over. So I said, how the hell did they get over that road? There must be a way that they could climb over from the other side to where we were. So I put my camera back in my bag, and I left my tripod like halfway extended out, and I just put it over my shoulder. So in case this guy comes in and he gives us shit, I'm just going to whack him with this thing. Nobody's going to find him there till the next morning, and then we just duck. But he came up, and obviously they're taking chances, and he said, no, he's looking for a cigarette or 5 rand or whatever it was he was looking for. So we just said to him, sorry, we can't help him. We got in the car and we left.
Yeah, and you get those experiences a lot on the streets when you're doing street photography. So when I walk out and I'm photographing during lockdown, I've got no money on me. I've got the bare essentials. I've got a bottle of water. I don't carry food with me. I just carry, you know, the basic equipment that I only need for that time, because it's a lot easier to say to someone, I don't have anything on me. You know, like, you know, you can be honest about it and straight up and say, listen, I don't have cash on me. I don't have this. You're wasting your time, you know, like, please stop bothering me. Which is a good strategy I found when I'm walking out on the streets. And yeah, obviously, if you have got that protection with, you know, if you are feeling uncomfortable, recognize that that's uncomfortable, and pack your gear up and go. And if they are going to mug you, at the end of the day, it's just equipment. It's not your life. So give them whatever they want. It doesn't matter if, you know, you can always replace that. Or maybe you can't replace the amazing sunset photo you just took. But, you know, like, you'll have other sunsets.
I always say that if I should get into that position, and thank goodness and touch wood, I've never been, they normally wouldn't come and look for shit with me, because I'm a pretty big guy, and one teacher, they will think twice before confronting me with something. Or luckily, that's what I keep telling myself, is that if something goes down, I would see if I can at least get the memory cards back from them. Say to them, listen, take whatever you want. Just all I want the memory cards. It's like $100 for one of these things. You've got a camera with 40 grand in your hand. So, but yeah, it's difficult. But knowing myself, I would probably put up a fight in anyway. If I've got any sort of leverage on him, I'm gonna hurt him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I suppose we've got to, you know, like, you can't help it. That's your human, you know, like, that's how you would respond, you know. Thankfully, I haven't really, yeah. I've had my, like, picked a couple of times whilst I've been out on shoots in protest areas. It's very interesting when you're out, like, if you ever get the opportunity to photograph strikes, or like actual protests where there's burning tires and tear gas flying everywhere, you know, that's very, you know, like, you learn, like, you don't walk around with shorts with open pockets. You don't have anything in an open pocket, because once you get swarmed by about 10 guys that are on top of you, you even feel that your phone's been lifted. And that's happened to me once or twice. Even it was during a Fees Must Fall protest at the UNISA buildings. UNISA buildings? No, not the UNISA. The Union building, sorry. Yeah, very interesting. And then so they lifted my phone, and I had to run back to the car train station and catch a car train all the way back to Sandton to file my story, because I couldn't send it via phone. So everyone's like wondering where I was, because I wasn't in communication with people. And yeah, it was quite a scare. And it was like a good 3 kilometer run back into thing. And then to get the story out and file the photos was quite interesting. You know, very, very cool.
Question about those kind of stories. Obviously, I've never seen any of those images of yours. Are you allowed to share them? Are they the property of News 24? Or are they your property? How does that work?
So before I was working for News 24, I was working with Forbes African magazine. So I own the rights to all my photographs. I've been photographing with my own gear for years. I'm kind of like I've never really had the opportunity for work to supply me with gear. So anything I do shoot for them is kind of like a bonus for them. So I'm technically paid as a written journalist, but all my photography is my photography. So the photojournalism content is usually, we do keep it exclusive to a story. So we won't publish it beforehand. Afterwards, yes, you can publish. I do have a website up actually where I do keep a nice large portfolio of like my favorite contents. If people were interested in seeing it, that's usually where I keep, updating it every couple of months to add some new photos. But yeah, a lot of my photography now, I'm shifting towards doing the more landscape, environmental based work. So I think from May, you'll be seeing a lot more environmental based stories, kind of like the rat story that we were talking about. I'm going to be doing a lot more of that work because I'm going to be leaving Business Insider and I'll be working as a freelance journalist. So the idea being I want to get on the ground, produce those, impactful stories with, human interest stories, animal interest stories, innovation at its heart, right from the streets.
Okay. Is there anything that you say, right, as soon as I walk out that door, the first thing I'm going to pursue, or is it you're just going to take a bit of a breather and just see what happens?
No, at the moment I'm quite obsessed with tidal pools. If you follow like a lot of the photo streams that I put up, I do like a lot of photography of them. So I'm busy collecting them, as in like collecting images of all the tidal pools around Cape Town. So I'm not actually sure what I'm on. I must be on about 8 or 9, but like not all, the weather isn't always perfect or ideal to go get a photograph of a tidal pool. So you've got to time it quite, you got to time it quite right, as well as you've got to get time to do it. But yeah, a lot of very interesting stories coming about it with conservation, eco-conservation wise. The city is shifting the maintenance of them from chemical-based maintenance to more environmental friendly based work. So that's maintaining the pools using eco-friendly methods. Okay?
Yeah, what did they do that was chemically based? Because all the tidal pools I know is like the ocean comes in and out as it pleases. There's fish living in it, there's crabs and all sorts of stuff. Why would they use chemicals in it from the beginning?
Well, I think it was, from a generation or two before when, there were things, maintenance that they were doing on, say, for instance, the walls, which needed to be, they would clean the walls, which using, actual harmful chemical, or even the paint itself can destroy the environmental, the ecology of the actual animals in it. So they use, instead of using a chalk-based paint, they're using something else. So the methodology of it has been formalized and has been accepted by the Western Cape government as like that is the protocol that they want to be following in the next years. So that they've been piloting a lot of that work in a couple of the tidal pools, St. James, Cock Bay, Wallis tidal pool, for the last couple of years, and now they're starting to implement it as an actual program. So a lot of it would have been, I think you would probably be thinking of St. James or something when you were talking about those tidal pools, because it sounds like it would be the, like it's a very popular photographer spot to go to. So for the last couple of years there, that was actually a pilot project where they were trying to figure out how they could clean it. And instead of like scraping off or killing the seaweed, they can just use high pressure hoses to kill off the, to remove the algae on the top edges of the wall, so that people can walk on it where it's not so dangerous. Like it's just little things like that, just implementing those that have become more of a formal protocol, which will go towards, creating that beautiful ecosystem, so that we can all love and enjoy. And do you know how many like octopuses are swimming around in those tidal pools? It's actually quite a shock to the system too, when you think about how much life is in there. And they used to like periodically drain them. They used to actually drain the entire tidal pool to clean it, just so that they could clean the tops of the walls. It's quite frightening, actually.
Tidal pools are amazing thing. Well, anything that you stick in the ocean, within a couple of months, it's going to have some sort of little habitat growing on it, or whatever the story is. And
yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the tidal pools look now after lockdown. It's 21 days of no one swimming in them. Like I think it could be very interesting, especially now at the seasonal time. This is usually the time that the tidal pools actually, there's a lot of life that comes into them. So I'm expecting it could be quite a few good dives. If you get your opportunity on day 1 of lockdown is over, head over to a tidal pool fast, because you'll see all sorts of creatures in there that probably wouldn't be around normally.
I saw a video yesterday of seagulls and cormorants pushing up a big school of anchovies in Langebaan right onto the beach,
Yes.
almost like a run kind of thing. And I'm just thinking,
incredible.
I was living there, I would have had my fishing rod out. I would have been spinning on the edge of that thing because there would be game fish there, and just go. I wouldn't care if they come and lock me up. It would be awesome.
And I see there's also just today, I didn't verify this, so you can't vet me on this, but I see floating around photos of killer whale. The killer whales are back in False Bay, off Cork Bay, and they're apparently just offshore, and they'd shepherded a whole shoal of dolphins, and they were doing torpedo. You know how the great whites torpedo prey? They were using to get dolphins like right offshore. There's apparently the photos look amazing, like incredible, like seeing a killer whale do what a great white is doing. Like, can you imagine? Like, just stunning.
They're clever animals, those. To have figured out that you can kill a great white just for the liver, they're very clever animals.
Yeah.
But all these things used to happen in Cape Town. If you go back to the 60s and 70s and 50s, that used to be a common thing. The guys used to be able to catch bluefin tuna off the ledges in Cape Point.
Incredible.
You must go back and read. I had a book, an old book that had a lot of old stories from way back then. The guys were catching bluefin tuna on a regular basis. I'm not talking about bluefin tuna this size. I'm talking about 200-300 kilogram bluefin tunas off the rocks in Rooikraans in Cape Point.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to see it all coming back here. It's just it also just shows you how much the city has grown. I mean, I've only been here since 2016, but just the impact of urbanization on Cape Town as a whole, the False Bay area, and the Blouberg side as well. Like, just ship traffic has just increased it so much that it's amazing that we don't actually have more whale strikings than we do. And like all the marine life has had to kind of like adapt, and you can see now, we can actually see it's affecting us, how it's affecting the marine life. And I mean, the other day, just outside our window here, there was I don't know which bird it was a hawk. Like an actual hawk in the middle of the city. It was just chilling. Everyone was out in the balcony watching this thing, and it was obviously checking out all the pigeons in the area. Like, I knew we had owls, but I haven't seen like an actual bird of prey in Cape Town, apart from like an owl up on Lion's Head. This was in the middle of Sea Point. This guy was just chilling there watching like the pigeons below it. It's fascinating to see, like, how when you have this quiet streets and you have less traffic, how it can just, nature just kind of comes back.
But it's weird how people perceive these kind of things. I chatted to the guys from the Bird of Prey Sanctuary at Spear.
The Eagle Encounters. Hank.
Yes. They do.
Great interview, actually.
They do pest control with hawks. I think they use a Harrier hawk that they use. And he said to me, we'll go to these fancy Lari-Dar golf estates, and they rock up there with a cage with a hawk in and everything, take them out. Now all the tunnies say, "Oh, this is so cute. I'm so glad you're not using boys." He says, "Okay, he says, what you need to do is, because the Egyptian geese are so big, they're about double the size of the hawk. They use the female." So I don't know if he told you this when you met them.
No, he did. Yes, yeah.
Where they literally had to, they throw the hawk out the side of the car. So this thing's got a bit of speed and momentum already, and it hits that freaking goose, and the shit and feathers flying everywhere. It is the first goose that goes down. These tunnies have got their hands in the hair. How could this be so cruel? It's nature. It's what it's supposed to be. And just I don't know how well you follow with these kind of activism kind of things. If let's say we talk about Table Mountain and we talk about safety, and it is something I don't know if I've mentioned it to you with those Himalayan towers that's on the mountains.
Yes, you have, yeah.
and I honestly think that if Cape Town, and look, it's going to be a lot of red tape involved. If they can open that stuff up for international hunters to come and at least cull some of the animals, and the quick way I worked it out is you can hunt a tar bull in New Zealand, where they're also invasive, for $15,000 to hunt one animal. So if you can put that up for Table Mountain, they can put a tag out for 5 or 6 animals and make enough money to employ at least 3 more rangers, or 5 rangers for that matter, on Table Mountain. It's not going to take a lot of. It's not going to take a lot away from the population that's there, that is damaging in any way. It's just going to be all the red tape involved with doing it on Table Mountain.
Hunting, yeah. Unfortunately, Table Mountain is a bit contentious, obviously being in a city, and with gun permits, it might be a bit worrying. But I'm aware with I'm quite aware of the tar.
My wife's uncle used to be the park manager in Table Mountain back in the 70s, and he told me how they had to shoot them. They had to literally eradicate them completely, and they shot them up until the point where there was like 5 or 6 animals left they just could not get to. They were just too deep into the mountains and into the crevices and everything to get to. And obviously, you must have seen them on the mountain. That little population has again exploded to where it is at the moment.
Yeah, and they're very destructive when it comes to eating the fynbos, I've heard. So yeah, it will be an issue, but much like alien vegetation, we want to try maintain the ecology and the environment as much as possible and keep it as natural as possible. And even with alien vegetation itself, those blue gums and eucalyptus and blue wattles or black wattle, they spread so fast. It's so difficult to manage them because they grow so quickly, and they, unless you have active participants and funding, keeping an eye on them, it can really get out of hand very quickly, and it's so destructive to the natural vegetation.
On that topic, I photographed one of the Sandby congresses a couple of years ago, where one of the ladies spoke that they actively had I'm pretty sure it still is, an alien vegetation clearing project. But the problem was that they went in and spot checked on some of these guys, and they get to the place where they were supposed to clear, and it was pine trees down in George area, where they only ring the bark of the trees closest to the road. So when you drive by, you only see half the ring from the roadside. So it looks like the tree is ringed completely, and then they would invoice them. So it's everybody's out there to make a quick buck and scam everybody as soon as.
That's terrible. Oh man, but that's when you need like people like the WWF and whoever's maintaining it, or Cape Nature themselves, or whichever environmental group. They're important because they're the watchdogs. They're looking out for it. They're the ones who passionate about it, and it doesn't matter what sort of industry it is. It could be abalone farming as well, or like you say, TARS. You need passionate people behind it, and people to really use that as it would be great if that could be their income. I think in general we need to stop paying footballers millions of dollars to kick balls around, and we need to take all that money and give it to health practitioners and give it to environmental conservationists, because at the end of the day, and we won't care about what Lionel Messi was doing 20 years ago, when we can't walk around anymore because we have to wear oxygen masks or whatever, like as a apocalyptic theory. But the general consensus is we really need to shift our way of thinking about the environment towards sustainable the sustainability, and we're the generation that has to do it now, because 10, 20 years down the line, it's going to be too late. We're the people who actively have to make an involvement. And that's what I like, that's my passion. That's what it's about. That's why we go out and shoot nature, in nature, because that's why we love it, and it's beautiful, and we want to make sure that it's here for generations to come, when drone laws are obviously completely relaxed and we can fly them wherever we want to.
Well, you're just going to fly in a country where you're not going to cause anybody, not going to offend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We've gone up onto an hour. I don't know if there's anything else you still want to chat about.
Just maybe, maybe this. Yeah, so there are a couple of videos that are going around of drones being used in lockdown situations, in lockdown cities. As beautiful as they are, please guys be aware that as a drone hobbyist, and unless you have the license or permission from the correct license, you're operating under a remote operator certificate, you shouldn't be flying your drone in the city. There's a national air lockdown, and it's, that for me is, we've all got to just be aware of that. And it's a big topic amongst drone pilots at the moment. I'm not flying my drone at all. I haven't flown it at all in lockdown. I'm resisting the urge every day because I see amazing footage, but let's all just be just a bit of a call out to everyone, please guys, let's just follow the correct procedures, and let's do the right thing. There are a lot of people who've spent a lot of money trying to get the correct certificates so that they can fly safely within a city. And just remember that air laws do, RPAS laws still do apply.
It's most of those things, the guys are just irresponsible, and they're hunting for that 10,000 likes on Facebook and on Instagram, and that's all it is. They've got no disregard to anybody or anybody else in the air, because how many choppers are in over Cape Town City during the day? There's plenty.
Yeah.
Are they on the lookout for them? I highly doubt it. It's absolutely crazy what people will do just to get those likes and views. Yes, and I do think that a lot of people appreciate that footage of the empty streets and the empty promenade and everything, but they should just be careful and don't, because there'll be one guy that screws it up for the rest of us.
Yeah, and I think it's just a lesson. As much as we've got all these amazing tools, we've got to use them responsibly. Yes. So yeah, and I fly as much as I can in legal areas. I don't try to break any laws that I know I'm breaking off. And I know a lot of people will see this amazing footage and then they think that they can fly it as well because, it seems like it's the norm. But just be aware that for lockdown, there's no fly zone. So unless you are an emergency service or an essential service, and you have correct permit to fly, you shouldn't be flying your drones in the city. And I'm not doing it. I'm walking around in the streets with a camera in my hand, not flying a drone. So this is it's before everyone starts trying to fly their drones to start delivering biltong and doing city things. Remember, there are helicopters that are going to be flying around, very well, hopefully not very soon, but you don't know how quickly this disease can escalate. So They need that air traffic. So just be aware, it's the same as flying your drone when there's a fault fire, and a helicopter can't operate if they know there's a drone flying around in the area to dump water onto a fault fire.
Crazy. I've had a client request from me to get some pictures of his farm in the Durans about 2 years ago. And where he wanted to have the pictures taken, I had to be up at about 500 meters to get the shots that he wanted, to try and get most of the farm in one image. And I said to him, I'm not going to do it because I feel comfortable in flying up until about 200 meters, which my limit is set to 200. If I can't get it in at that height, I will just not do it. Because, and the wind of where you stand and with the wind at 200 meters is two completely different things. Mm. And plus, where this place is, it is a direct air traffic route. All the sprayers, all the choppers, the aeroplanes, everything goes through that channel to get to the endurance from where they fuel up. So if you're standing there with the drone 500 meters up in the sky, that's the height these planes are. It is. And I said to him, listen, I'll do it. You sign an indemnity form. I put the drone's value on the invoice for you. So if I land the drone safely, nothing happened, I just credit that off the invoice. And then we carry on. And they said, no, they're not prepared to take the chance. I said, but you want me to take the chance? I said, there's no way I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, like we do have some very regulated, it is a very regulated industry, the drone industry, and to do commercial work is very difficult. But, that's the kind of the reality that we are in. Maybe it will shift, but yeah.
The people that I do work for, where I use my drone, is in the farming community. So I'm on their private property, away from anything that it could bother. If it's in a place where I know that there's crop sprayers, I will not even take the drone out. And I asked them beforehand when we go, I said, listen, are there people that's going to be spraying? What's the story? Where are you situated? So I can have a look at those things, just to be safe and give them the assurance that I'm not a cowboy that's going to be there.
Yeah. So just that's just a final message to that. Yeah, I'd say let's just be, it's lockdown. It's not fun and games. I'm not going out there and photographing landscape sunsets. When you're going out because you're working. You're not going out to have, if you have fun with, if you do what you like, if your work is your fun, then it's fine. But, we're not doing the landscape stuff. We're doing the real journalism, telling stories, documenting what's happening on the ground.
But listen, please send me the link of your, where people can view those images. Because
yes, of course.
In the description of the video, so people can go look at it. And I would like to go see it, because that is something I would still, I love watching good photojournalistic images.
Yeah, totally. I'll send you it right away.
Cool. Have you seen that HBO series called Witness?
No.
Do yourself a favor. You've probably got a bit of time. It's on YouTube. Just go search for Witness, WITNESS series. And it's a series that follows, I think it's a 6-part one, 6 different journalists, photojournalists in different areas. That there's one girl that was she was 7 months pregnant, and she was running around the jungles in Middle Africa looking for Connie. One of them in the Brazilian favelas. It really is an amazing series. You'll enjoy it.
That sounds cool. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, like,
it's raw footage. If the guy is there busy dying, he's actually dying. It's not.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of profession, isn't it? Photojournalism is like it's so true what they say about, there's that hook, like, of, where you get that like feeling of like it's an addiction, like you always go back. So you like feel like you actually, I often get it when I'm like, oh my God, I really could go to a protest today. And, because, sometimes when you just at the desk, you're just typing away and you're like, really, could really do with some burning tie in my hair. And it's amazing. Like, we're in a very fortunate position now.
Brief bit of that, where these guys in this series say that the camera is the barrier between them and what's actually happening. Because as soon as you take the camera away, it's like, oh shit, this is actually here. But when you're shooting, you're looking through a little viewfinder, and it's like as if you're watching a movie. And I had a little bit of a taste of that when my first daughter was born. I was shooting everything, and when they said to me, okay, right, you can come and cut the cord
signal lost.
And I put the camera down, it's like this flood of emotion just came over me at that particular spot. It was quite surreal. You can't explain it to people in words how it feels.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult, but it touches you here, like it hits you, like you can feel it, and like there's nothing more gratifying than knowing that the story that you have created has impact, you know.
Yes.
And you know, like it's gonna maybe change it's not maybe not going to change lives, but it's going to, you know, like help people understand that's, you know, like, oh my God, I didn't realize that that was a thing. Like, or wow, you know, you've totally changed the way I think about the world, or, you know, those sorts of emotions. That's what journalism's about, like bringing, you know, bringing people together, connecting people.
Yeah. And you've probably watched the movie Bang Bang Club?
Yes, yeah. Actually, no, it's some of them, Greg, and you know, we've been out on shoots with some of them as well, yeah.
Okay.
And Ja, yeah. So Ja, they're crazy. They're nutters, eh? Like, so.
There's two things that they said in that movie. Is one, after that picture with the child with the vulture and everything, they said that if people don't ask questions about your photos, you didn't do the job correct. And the second thing is that if you're not shooting, well, what was it? Right at the beginning of the movie, when the guy's there with like a 200mm lens and he's like 30 meters away from
Not close enough,
they
yeah.
said, if you're not, yeah, you need to be there in it. So you shoot at 28, 35mm, and then you will get this the right emotion from the image.
Yeah, the best lens to use is definitely use your, you know, I think I find I'm quite comfortable with a 28 to 77 mil.
Yeah.
The Tamron's got, yeah, it's sort of 28 to 75. That's kind of like where it gives you just enough that you can be in someone's face to get like the whole face. But, you know, and then also it gives you a little bit of an advantage to get the full body, you know. It's very much like a, you know, very versatile lens sort of thing, you know. But it's so true. Like if you know, I'm very much, if you see me when I'm shooting landscapes as well, I'll go like right up onto the edge of the where the wave breaking, because that's where the action is. You want to be right there where the action is, you know. And that's exactly how I am when I'm shooting out in the things. And I also get shot at that a lot because I get too close. So but yeah, that's where it is, you know. Like if you're not seeing, you know, the sweat of people's faces, then you're not really experiencing it with them.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to look at this, at that website of yours. I'm curious now.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Cool. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming to chat to me. And
thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, and hopefully all this is over soon and we can finally go out and shoot more interesting stuff.
What are you going to shoot? What's your first thing you're going to shoot?
To be very honest with you, I've got no idea. I'm planning a couple of things I want to shoot in the studio with my masks and my gloves and all my stuff is all stock type images. But I want to, I don't as to look stocky. I want it to be something different. But I want to do it this week still. Before.
No, you must. Yeah. If you can get your hands on a ventilator, we need ventilator pictures as well. That's going to be the next thing. So we've got mask shortage, we've got glove shortage. We need ventilator sort of based things, you know, stock of that sort of, like also with complexion, you know. You know, because I think the ventilators is going to be the next story, because we only have like 3,000 in the country. So if things do escalate, you know, that would be a good, you definitely, because there's no, I checked on all the free websites, because BI doesn't pay for stuff, but yeah. We've got a contract with Getty, but we never use Getty photos, but still.
Maybe we know somebody that knows someone that could organize something. Oh, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, cool. Jay, thanks. Have a awesome evening. And yeah, keep safe out there.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you too, hey?
Right,
and cheers, bye.
All right, bye.